Hi, everyone. Welcome to Coffee Chat with CastleHill. Today's episode is part two of our conversation with Yakut Akman and Alpa Inamdar, talking about the ESG impact of diversity in financial institutions. I hope you really enjoy this second half. So we started the conversation talking a little bit about the third party side of it and trying to, how do we encourage people to use those third parties? Because I know I've seen certainly situations in the past where companies have tried to use third parties as their method for complying with their own policies around diversity and inclusion. Saying, "Oh, that's where all of our diversity is coming from," and it's sort of ironic talking about this as a white male from Western Europe, but I'll keep going anyway. Um, so the at least genetically from Western Europe. So uh, one of the things I think in our pre-meeting you talked about is that there used to be sort of this concept of what would a man have done in that situation, right? What would it, that the pressure was on more for folks who were not in the white male side of the world to think about and act in a way or a perceived way of how that person would have been acting. How do you see that evolving over the past years as well? Like Alpa, you just mentioned that sort of that women network is one way of getting information, but making sure that you have the partnership is so important. And where is that evolution coming from to think about it differently?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think there's a lot of different things, and if I, understood it, is it's also about, I think there's a couple of things, right? One is just pure accountability. So how do we measure accountability? I know direct, numbers, right? I'm a numbered person, so is Yakut, as you can tell. So I think the numbers kind of state how you are performing. So one thing I would be looking at, and a lot of the organizations are looking at, is they have made the part of their performance goals and part of your incentive plans as well as how various in your current workforce versus also your supply chain management. How diverse are you bringing those products and services? And that's one way to benchmark it. The second thing is also the training, right? I think as majority of our leaders and as managers, are we providing the right training about, diversity, microaggression, right? Some of the stereotypes, the unconscious bias. How do we make sure that we have the right workforce and understands what that expectations are, right? So it's very, very challenging when you're in a meeting and you have predominantly, let's say, Asians in those meetings, and they're expecting them to have a very different type A personality. So if you think about the culture and how they've been brought up, and they don't really like to challenge the status quo per se, or even respect their elders. And those kind of situations, unless you have a good understanding of that culture and how people operate, you're going to come out of that meeting going, nobody really understands what I'm trying to accomplish, and I'm not getting the right support. Versus if you took the time understanding your workforce and being able to kind of bring them in the journey and saying, this is what we are proposing. Is this something that's aligning, or do you think we need to do something differently? And give them an opportunity to kind of feel comfortable. I think these are certain things we need to do as an organization. And there's lots of stuff right now, if you think about it, right, from a DNI perspective. But I do think, bottom line, what I'm trying to state is hold leaders accountable, right? Make sure you have the right data. And like what Yakut said is, let's not, put this on the surface, right? If it's 10 to 100, look at the overall percentage is one of the things that I would say is don't even give me the numbers, right? Tell me from your total workforce of 100,000 or 200,000 employees, how much of that is diverse? And I think it's more reporting that is required, right? How much of this diverse workforce, how much are we retaining, right? In last 5 years, which specific minority group had significantly left the organization, and do we know why, or what do we need to do differently? So I think there's lots, tools we do have under our belt, but how do organizations apply that and use it for their advantage is some things that I would say.
Alpa, you said a number of things that made me uh, think, because you touched on a number of really, really critical points. So allow me to expand on them a little bit using my experience. Um, Certainly, you cannot manage what you don't measure. This is a known statement. We say it all the time, but we don't necessarily do it. Uh, for a long time in the organizations that I worked in, uh, while we gave it the lip service saying, we got to have more minority, more women, blah, 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 all these things, uh, we weren't allowed to look at the numbers. They said, no, 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 that's like a top secret. We can only tell you this. You can only look under the covers just a little bit. Uh, Now, though, a lot of companies, this is being measured at the CEO level down. And that's how you really make sure that you hold people accountable and you see progress or lack thereof. And then you start asking, why are we not moving the needle? Why are we losing a lot of people? Why is the turnover so high? Why do we have such and such problem in this part of the organization? And that brings me to something that's fundamental to all of this, which is culture. I think the culture of an organization, set at the very top, and making sure that it trickles down properly, uh, assuming that it's the right tone at the top, obviously, uh, is so important. And Alpa used the term training. Not to disagree with her, but I actually have, over the years, decided that training really is not the way to go. We need to educate our folks because you train dogs so that they can react to things robotically. That's not what you want in this kind of an environment or given these goals. You want people to have critical thinking and connect the dots, saying, ah, this is what makes sense, this is the right thing to do, this is what's really going to pay for our employees, for our customers, our shareholders. This is what's going to make our organization greater than it would be otherwise. So, making sure that we have that culture and we feed it and we make sure everybody understands and they become a part of that culture is really the winning ticket. Otherwise, another one of my sayings is, let's not confuse motion with progress. There'll be a lot of motion. Everybody will be busy doing things, even measuring things. God knows what they will measure. But progress is not going to be there.
Excellent point. So, in defense of Alpa, well, I took your idea of the training as well. I mean, I think awareness is a critical aspect of this, but I think Yakut, what you're talking about is awareness isn't good enough, maybe, right? It's
No,
not.
look, as I said, I don't disagree with the points Alpa made at all. All I'm saying is that we put a lot of stock in training. I mean, the organizations have training up the gazoo. They think that if they send their employees to a 3-hour diversity training, they're all going to come out being big proponents and marchers of
Diversity champions, Yakut, right? Like
yeah.
they're all gonna be.
It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. This is an ongoing battle. How do you make sure you change the overall culture so you hear these things from the CEO, you see in the results, you see in the annual reports, it becomes a part of your day-to-day business meetings. That's how you change the hearts and minds of people, not from a 3 hour or 30-day training program. That's really my point.
No, and I think what Yakut's talking about is action, right? I think you and I are talking about more of the awareness, right? But I mean, you need to be aware first, right? But at the same time, awareness is only so much, right? Because like she said, you can take a 30-hour classes, but what are you executing, right? When you're sitting on that table, and if you are not getting a minority or just diverse opinions, right? If it's just one person leading those meetings and kind of making all the decisions, right? Then that's a culture, right? And that's where I think Yakut, you have a point. It's great. Yes, training could be a starting point in a sense. Yes, let people be aware. But end of the day, that is not one end all, right? It's not a checkbox exercise. Alpa did the training. Great. Okay. What did Alpa do on her day to day, and how is she changing that organizational culture? I think that's the most critical element. And that's where you see the actually success, right? Because that's when you're going to see people building that relationships where they're going to be comfortable. That's when the loyalty comes in. That's when people feel that they want to be part of whatever that organization in that moment is.
I will also mention one other thing. Sorry to uh, sort of take this into a bit of a new dimension, but when you think about ESG, right, that's the topic we're talking about: environmental, social, and corporate governance factors. I was thinking about this the other day. I said, if I were structuring an organization and I was in financial services, let's assume I was given the responsibility to reorg the entire company. I wouldn't really put environmental, social, and corporate governance functions all in the same box, say, oh, they go hand in hand together. They really don't. So what's the common theme? What's the right that cuts across all of these things? And I've come to realize that this is really social pressure about doing the right thing. It's about doing the right thing by our employees, customers, and shareholders. Uh, and if you take it even further, it's about risk management. So that's where I feel very comfortable talking about, right? It's about risk management. Because if you don't do these things, which are the right things to do, the social pressures are such at this point in time, it's come to a tipping point, using another common phrase now that's become a part of our day to day language. Um, there's going to be a reaction in the marketplace. Your customers are not going to come if they hear that your carbon footprint is higher than what's acceptable, or you're not hiring diverse employees, or you God forbid you have millions and if not billions of dollars in penalties because you're not complying with regulatory requirements. So it is about risk management. But that's not going to increase your revenue if your full mindset only is, I need to make money. All of these things generate expense. So that's why I go back to the point about uh, making sure that there is a good understanding and explanation as to why doing these things will indeed be better business. I don't think there is a good understanding yet by all the decision makers or even the folks at the junior levels. Uh, as people come into the workforce, the younger folks, they certainly are much more aware, to Alpa's point, about all these ESG factors. But how do they then apply that to business decisions as they go through the ranks and they become decision makers? Where do they see the value? I think that's where we need to help educate folks uh, and make sure that we strengthen those values. And it really, all of these things become a part of the culture. So they don't have the kind of experience that I had many years ago. I was auditing a business within my organization, and I had to say to the CEO of that particular entity, I said, "You're not complying with XYZ, and I'm writing you up." And he looked at me, he said, "Who the heck are you to tell me how to run my business? I make X million dollars. Like, what are you talking about?" So this is exactly what I'm talking about in terms of the culture, the values. If the only goal is to make money, all these ESG factors will be ignored. And they have been. I mean, none of these themes are new. We've known these things, we've talked about these things for years. None of these things are new. Doing the right thing, the energy efficiency, human rights, board independence. I'm just touching on a few of these things under ESG. None of these things are new. But when the goal is just to make money, and these things cost money, or you ignore them. Um, so somehow I think because of where we are, people are realizing that they can no longer make money. If anything, this will backfire. Um, so hopefully the cultural change will continue to really be stronger and stronger. It'll become ESG will become a part of our DNA. All these three letters that we're throwing around, but that's really what it's coming down to at this point in time. Anyway, that's how my mind works, at least.
No, but I think it's a very nice way of thinking about it. You're right, because this all existed before, but there is that, as I call social, like you said, social pressure, right, to do it. And I do think the new generation, compared to, let's say, the our generations, the Gen Z, the millennials, they are really, really concerned about the environment, right? They want to be affiliated with organizations that they know that are doing good for the planet, right? I have a daughter who's she's 16 years old, and she wanted to buy something specifically because she said, "Mom, this is more environmental friendly." And I'm like, "Yeah, but it's like $6 more." And she, it doesn't matter to them. But no, Mom, this is the right thing to do because my kids will then be able to be in this environment. So I think it's the reputation of the organizations, how they are aligning with environmental global, products. And, these children or the Gen Zs and the millennials are okay paying a little bit more, but saving the planet or saving the environment and making sure they're doing the right thing. And I think that's pushing the ESG agenda because we need to do that, right? I think it's essential. But like you said, as organizations, it will be more, exactly, it's going to take expense, right? Nothing comes in. If it's organizations with Modern Slavery Act, there are some connotations. And, most suppliers, because we talk about third party governance, they might not want to be affiliated because that also impacts their reputations because now you're aligning or partnering with these vendors. So I think, look, ESG is going to hopefully help us drive that change. The regulators within a couple of years are going to come in very heavily, right, and start asking for those data and metrics, which will then, I think, accelerate the path as well. So, look, we are in the right trajectory. We need to do more, but at the same time, we need to be mindful that this, we're not there yet. There's a lot of work that needs to be done in the organizations and especially even industries, right? I think sometimes it's a little bit easier when you're in manufacturing side, coming in from manufacturing, because it's easier for me to say, hey, if I'm going to buy this product, I buy from this region, from this environment. I want to make sure that the plants are green, energy efficient. It's a little bit challenging when we're doing investment in the financial industry. Are we looking at the right products and services? Am I having ETFs that really encompasses the swaps and the buckets that actually affect environment? And those kind of data and metrics, I think we have a little bit of a while to go.
I was smiling at Alpa hearing what you said, and I was thinking that when those Gen Zs become adults and they make their own money and they're willing to pay the extra $6 and not have mom pay the extra $6, then we have achieved our goal.
No, I think you're right. It makes a huge difference. It is right now mom's credit card, or like you
Yeah,
said, it is, it's not coming out of theirs. But I think, like you said, I like the, I'm hoping you're right. But I hope, that actually pushes us, right? Because I think that's coming out of our comfort zone, that the, millennials and the Gen Zs are challenging. And look, there's a huge reputation impact, and you can see that, right? Because you'll be in a headline tomorrow in any of these huge publications, and do you want to take that reputational risk? Because I think that has a significant cost to any organizations.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, ESG is definitely something that everybody's talking about, and certainly awareness is there and it's growing. I was just watching a commercial on TV this morning as I was sipping my tea, and I can't even remember the company, so it's not important. It said something like ESG is responsible investment. I was like, gee, ESG is responsible investment. Interesting statement. Um, but that's what it's coming down to now. I think people are beginning to see value. Um, Unlike, I was thinking about 2008, for instance, when the financial crisis happened. I would argue that one of the bigger factors was this desire to make money and give no income verification loans to people, and where the interest rates jumped, and all these people with variable interest rate mortgages all of a sudden had to pay double, if not triple, the amount of mortgages that they were. And they were like, wait a minute, I don't have the money. And the banks were like, oh, you signed on the dotted line. It's too bad. Because they were so exuberant about giving all these loans without saying, gee, will they be able to pay if the rates move up? Their income hardly can make this low interest rate. Did we not know about this risk? Of course we did. Of course the bankers did. But we were looking the other way because the business managers were just too happy making the money. As a matter of fact, I will add one other point that I was thinking of, Alba, when you were talking about a few other things before. Yes, the compliance officers, the risk managers in charge definitely need to do a better job in overseeing what's going on in the company. But I will come back to this culture point. If the business managers, the people who run the day to day businesses, they make the decisions, don't really understand risk, the underlying risk, and the value in managing those risks, we will always be finding ourselves in a reactive mode. If we wait for the regulators to come up with their regulations, which they will, Alpa is absolutely right. But they're always slow in catching up with these things. So it may be 2 years, 3 years, even 5 years down the road. And they're going to expose all these requirements, and all the companies are going to say, oh, gee, we need to throw more money and do this. Oh, my God, another expense. And then it's going to create some bad feelings among the business managers. Oh my God, I need to allocate X amount of my budget to this risk management function. This is how they think. I've been a part of these discussions for a gazillion years. But how do you get them to say this is the right thing to do? I don't claim to uh, say that some business managers don't understand it. If anything, the more successful ones, I would argue, are the ones that have incorporated risk management as part of their decision making process, so that they don't react to the results of bad decisions after the fact. They make it an organic part of their decisions, and they make it a part of their thinking, their even feeling, having that sixth sense about what's right, what's wrong, and it really pays off. But if you just go for the green, but in a different kind of green, and you can bring in the short term lots of money. But then I would even argue that the penalties, whether they're coming from the regulators and business customers, whatever, will be huge. And that CEO who challenged me many years ago, actually, that business got sold off, and I think he was unemployed for a long, long time. Um, I, I wish him well, no hard feelings. But it like what goes around comes around. That's why I come back to this being all about risk management and making sure that we embed this into our overall culture.
I agree. I think it's part of the DNA. I agree, Yakut, right? It has to be. And the business can't, in the past, they kind of wash their hands in the sense of, I focus on the products, I bring the revenue. You focus on the risk. I don't care. Now that analogy doesn't work anymore, right? You own the business. You need to understand the risk, all the dependencies, and how you bring the revenue, right? So in the past, is I can only spend money, I will bring more money. I don't need to worry about the expenses. And that's where, Yakut, I think you're making a great point, is it has to have the same, like you said, you have to have a skin in the game. You need to understand it. And a lot of them, I think, given the fact, just the pure visibility and the transparency, it's definitely arising in the leadership when you are going to these new products and services. And I agree. I think, look, the broader the range of your supplier base, it allows you to hedge that risk, right? Understand what your products and services that you're bringing in house and what that impact to your day-to-day business is, and think about all the different element of risk, right? Because everybody else is not going to define that risk for you, and that means you'll need to take that ownership and really understand, do your due diligence, make sure whoever you're bringing in with the vendor, right? Do you feel comfortable with the service that they're providing? Do you feel that the organization meets the policies and procedures that are outlined, not just from the checkbox, but do you feel if tomorrow this organization goes down, do you feel that you did your right diligence? And those are all important questions that the leadership in the business needs to own. So yeah, I think gone are the days where it gets outsourced.
And hand in hand with that, uh, a lot of companies are coming up with their ESG statements from the very top. Just Google it for any company and then put ESG. I'm sure there's some statement that they came out with claiming, if it's a financial institution, which is certainly my area, uh, we're going to invest more in minority business. We're going to have more access for the blacks and this and that to mortgages. We're going to lower our carbon footprint. We're going to hire more diversity, whatever it is. So they're committing themselves to doing all these things. Um, then you read further. It's like we're going to invest. I'm going to make this up. $100 million over the next 20 years, right? All these promises, and then you say to yourself, what is $100 million in the overall scheme of the numbers that they deal with? Again, to my earlier point about the vendors, we I think uh, and I hope numbers are going to be much more impressive than the little bit of you know, here and there nibbling on the sides kind of an approach. Because to be able to make a true difference and make up for all the sins of the past, if I could have put it that way, uh, we need a lot more effort, not just showcase the efforts, all the well-intentioned. And I don't mean to poo-poo what they're doing at all. It has to start somewhere. And I'm encouraged by the signs that I'm seeing, but it has to be so much more. It has to be taken on as a business project where you're under the gun and you need to do something within 6 months because there's a cyber attack. Look at what's happening. For instance, I was watching about the pipeline, right? This cyber attack. They're going to have to fix this in a matter of days. They don't have 2 years to respond to a regulatory criticism. So the mindset really has to change if we really want to make a difference in this area of ESG in all the different aspects of it.
I think that the pipeline example is an interesting one because I've been seeing this across multiple industries and in multiple countries where one of the fallouts from that, of course, is that there's going to be an impact in the energy consumption of an area, right? It's going to cost more money for energy to be delivered in certain areas, which has a greater environmental impact. There certainly is a social impact that's going to be coming from that right now, that people are going to be concerned, whether it's anger, purely as an anger of people are going to have to pay more price, more expensive fuel costs, some of those things, or the backlash that'll happen afterwards of saying this was preventable. Why didn't you prevent it? Where was your social side of it, which really leads back into the governance piece. And I think you both raised the point that ESG is a convenient acronym for a really broad set of risks that have been in these corporations for a long time. They just happen to be getting lumped together because of the fact that there is a social aspect to this that people are going to be focused on. That hopefully everybody, all the generations that are out there, are going to be focused on more and more as we go through this. And I think that sort of back to the idea of the diversity and inclusion are one of those trend-setting areas, I hope, within that space, and people really looking at where that will lead them to a much different place and focus on the right kind of green, not the wrong kind of green in their business operations overall. I really appreciate you both coming and participating and sharing your experiences and insights. And thank you so much.
Thank you. And hopefully next time we have another coffee chat, we'll talk about the great accomplishments and the great progress that has been achieved in all of these areas. But let me thank you, Tim and Alpa, for joining me in this, because this is a conversation that I think about often, not the conversation about the topic. So it's a great opportunity to have a channel to talk about all the thinking that I've done and I continue to do.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Yakut. Great session. Thank you very much.
I appreciate it. Have a great day, everyone. I hope that you enjoyed this week's episode of Coffee Chat with CastleHill. For more episodes, insights, and discussion, check us out on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, or at our website, www.castlehillrisk.com. Thank you again for joining us, and I'll see you next time on a Coffee Chat with CastleHill.